We start in Washington, D.C., in the White House. President Lincoln is receiving threatening letters of assassination. What does he do with these letters? He puts them in a file labeled Assassination.
One night, he had a dream that he was wandering through the White House and he heard people crying. He went from room to room and didn't see anyone until he reached the east room of the White House. Lincoln said, "There I met with a sickening surprise. Before me was a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face was covered, others weeping. 'Who is dead in the White House?' I demanded of one of the soldiers. 'The president,' was his answer. 'He was killed by an assassin.' Then came a loud burst of grief from the crowd, which woke me from my dream. I slept no more that night." The morning of April 14th was a good day. Lee had surrendered 5 days earlier, and Lincoln was dealing with the Confederate spy. Lincoln never felt so happy in his life. At 11, he met with his cabinet and talked about difficult problems in rebuilding his country. Later in the day, Lincoln went on a carriage ride with his wife, Mary. They talked about the death of their son, Willie. Willie was very important to the family and sent Mrs. Lincoln into deep depression. They then went to dinner. After dinner, they left to go to the Ford's Theater to watch a play. They arrived late, as any other ordinary man would, and made their way to the presidential box. Later in the play, Lincoln felt a chill that foreshadowed events that would happen later in the night.
Little did Lincoln and Mary know that the unlocked presidential box door would be a key component in the assassination later that night. Lincoln's bodyguard had also stepped down to get a better view of the play.
Then, as the audience burst into laughter, the assassin stepped into the box. It was John Wilkes Booth who stretched his arm out toward Lincoln's head and pulled the trigger. He fell forward in his chair, and Mary caught him as she let out a scream. Major Rathbone attempted to stop the gunman, but failed when he got slashed in the arm. The gunman jumped from the box to the stage, breaking the shin bone of his left leg. Doctors rushed through a crowd of shouting people to help the president with his wound. The bullet entered his skull above his left ear, cut through his brain, and lodged between his right eye. Mary stood beside him, sobbing, as the doctors did their work. They carried Lincoln to a boarding house across the street from the theater, where they continued to tend to him. Many congressmen and high government officials came to visit, but sadly, they knew there was no hope. The next morning, it was rainy and dreary, and Lincoln was barely breathing. The whole room was in tears when his heart stopped beating at 7:22 a.m. on April 15th. It was then that Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton said, "Now he belongs to the ages." Lincoln's funeral was held in the East Room of the White House, where, ironically, his dream also took place. On April 21st, a funeral train left with Lincoln's corpse, heading to Springfield, Illinois, the birthplace of Lincoln. It took the same route that he traveled on when he came to Washington, D.C. as a president-elect. 12 days after the assassination, John Wilkes Booth was cornered by federal troops and shot in a Virginia barn. Someone emptied Lincoln's pockets, which contained a pair of small glasses in a silver case, a small eyeglass cleaner, a large handkerchief with A. Lincoln stitched in red, an ivory pocket knife trimmed with silver, and a brown leather wallet lined with purple silk. The wallet contained a Confederate $5 bill and 8 newspaper clippings that Lincoln had cut out and saved.
Newspaper clippings praised this man who was leader, but nevertheless an ordinary man.